Number 3. I'm actually not too far from the courthouse. And I normally do more than one when I do the rollout. I want you to, I don't flippantly say that race or racism plays a role in certain events. But I'm going to tell you why I felt that it did have to do with the race of a Mexican Hispanic judge running over a textile worker. The first article I ever read on that was in the Corpus Christi Times. And it was, I believe, a front page, and they did a couple of days on it. I immediately knew, without knowing all the other details, that that was an advocacy article, meaning they ran that not as what a normal paper would do, freedom of information requests, things of that nature. They ran that article, and it was long. And it was a justification for a Mexican judge, Hispanic, by the name of Manuel Banales. I knew that when I read that article, and it must have been 9 years ago now. I knew that that was an advocacy article just by reading it. And Nick Jimenez, I mention him because he is like no longer the main commentator, editor piece that makes comments. And when I read it, it was, especially when they said the posted speed limit was 35 on a particular turn, and then they went in depth and explained that that's just a recommendation because it's a state highway. And then yesterday I read the article where the El Defensor said Jim Kalin said they clocked him at 91. But when I went back, thinking of that original article that I believe the Cola Times now has redacted, I could not figure out why they would have done that. At the fire department, I can tell you that Mexican, white, and we had a few black guys. In Kingsville, they didn't do that. People, a few times cases came up, and I was on the other side. There was a case where a black friend of mine, who was a firefighter, heard a white firefighter, I won't give the names, make a statement, a racial statement. Now, rightfully, that black firefighter who was Christian, and I kind of, I think I influenced him a little because he saw me reading a lot, he saw me doing Christian stuff, and he really got more back dedicated into the ministry. But he heard that white firefighter make the statement, and the white firefighter was in the union, and I, at that time, was not in the union, okay? I was in most of my life, but there's politics and stuff that go on. So I was on the other side. I was real mad at the union. And the white firefighter, I think at the time, he was an older guy, a friend of mine. He was like the vice president for the union and all. Meaning it would have been very easy for me because he made the statement. I guess he said nigger. The black firefighter overheard it and made a report. Now they investigated, the city of Kingsville investigated, rightfully, and they thought the guys that they were going to ask the questions, and one of them was me, they figured I would be real negative towards the white firefighter who made that statement, which of course I would never agree with a statement like that. But when I went in to the commissioners investigating this, I said, as you know, I'm not on the side right now of the white firefighter and the union guys, because I was not. I had a problem with the union at that time. I said, but I'll be honest. I said, I'm sure he said it, but I don't think he would have said it knowing it's wrong to say. I said, I don't think he said it directed towards my black friend. So I felt like all the years when people asked those questions, and I think it was even in that meeting, it was a commissioner's meeting investigating this instance, I think I mentioned And I've said before, I said, you know, we have a lot of divisions with the guys at times at the Far House. I said, but most of it is on the side of whether you're in the union or out of the union. It was like political stuff. And the majority of the guys I worked with were Hispanic. And look, they called themselves Mexican, okay? They used Mexican on it. So I never felt that. I never felt that. But when I read that article advocating strongly, like the Color Times was defending Judge Banales, I couldn't figure that out. And it put that paper in ill light, though I still read it, and I'm going to read it tonight. But then I had to ask, I mentioned on that first video, that lady that was killed by, I guess, a drunk driver. He's in jail right now. But I'll tell you, if it was a white person, it should make a difference. And if a white person was driving down the highway, doing at least twice the speed limit that was posted, and then you actually hit a TxDOT worker, which I passed up some street workers just a little while ago, whether you were drinking or not, that's called distracted driving. And when you're on that phone and you go out of the legal lanes, the only cases in the city or legally where charges are not brought or when maybe it's at night or people are not using a crosswalk or they're jumping over the barriers. Some of those cases, the driver is driving totally legally. But in the case of Judge Banales, just enough that was reported, that was a crime that man committed. And I don't think we should be in the days where if you had a Mexican district attorney or a Mexican whatever, that you should treat that differently. Especially being this community has made openly known that all of these types of drivers, we've had a problem with pedestrians being killed and hit. And we just recently, the last year, the DA, Mark Gonzalez, said, look, we're not going to take this lightly anymore. And you've had accidental people hitting bicyclists accidentally that have gone to prison. And I'll tell you, from all those reports, and it's interesting that the ones I gave you yesterday, they came out of like Brownsville Valley newspapers. They still had that article up, and I could not find it on the Color Times. It showed me that I believe it's possible that racism exists within the Hispanic community against white people and against black people. That's one of the secrets of this area. Okay? A lot of black people feel like community activists, NAACP, they feel like they've experienced it. And I would never say all Hispanics are racist. I used to take Pops here to this HEB. I'm on the HEB on Port. And I help Pops, and those of you that follow, he's an old man who passed away. Our original little church I started, I was like the only gringo, and we'd kid about that. All those brothers were Hispanic, Mexican brothers, but they were all my friends, and they had crime problems, and I would never. And it was like a little joke. And even when I moved up to Corpus Christi, I didn't know Flower Bluff was more like considered like the white area. I didn't know that. It was one house for sale that was a 4-bedroom on the whole, multiple listings on real estate. And I said, I'm looking for one, the first one, and then we bought that one. But I remember asking people over time, I remember asking somebody once, I said, what's the population like, meaning like the size? And it was a white guy in the bluff. He said, oh, it's good. It's like 90% white or something like that. I didn't mean that. And when some of my Mexican friends that I was helping knew I moved to Flower Bluff, they actually said at that time, oh, John, I hope you won't become more like a white stereotype thing. And then I realized, oh, maybe it was known for that. And I cannot figure any other reason why you would also have an advocacy. And Nick Jimenez was not the editorial, he was the guy doing it at that time, as far as I know. I can't imagine what you would have covered up and advocated so strongly. And then I realized the last few days that judge had done it before. Any citizen, and he sits and rules over people with cases, I'm assuming just like that. We do call for that judge to step down. And for you CCPD, and I'll add some of your names that I mentioned, and not in a derogatory way, I'll just add them so you'd watch. The history of some of that stuff you heard me talk about, you guys know that goes on. And I don't choose when I hear those stories. I never sought those stories, and it just got me mad to know that you treated it. People that are homeless and people that are on the street in poverty, oftentimes societies discriminate against those people. They think they can get away with stuff. And so, if you want to advocate for social justice, I actually did read those few articles about our white mayor, Joe McComb. And they were indeed, the ones I read when he first got in, they were disrespectful. And I know the Kohler Times endorsed Alda Martinez. And I figured just because maybe they felt she got a bad deal or whatever. But I'm wondering if it has to do with race. Hispanic people or Mexican people that have been raised in the culture, you are just as prone to have racist tendencies. And oftentimes, it's hidden behind an outward image of we're for the justice of people. This should have met. It has nothing to do with race. But I wonder why a Mexican judge that hit someone before, according to one of those articles, you advocated so openly for. And the more disturbing thing is that crime that he committed, hitting that textile guy, that was a crime that anybody else would have done prison time for because of the injuries of that man, because of the speed Banales was doing. It's a disgrace that man is on the court. Now, I believe he's on the court in the Valley, and his wife is, I think, Peggy Banales. But it's still a disgrace that that man's on the court. And I'll credit some of the other newspaper articles that I linked. They were more predominantly Hispanic, Mexican newspapers. They were closer to the Valley. And I'll tell you, they spoke the truth on it. They didn't advocate for Banales. The El Defensor, which me and my captain Al Lopez, we used to kid about, they had, and they're kind of looked at sometimes as, like being a little political, but they had the integrity to not cover up for somebody just because he was the same race. And I can't imagine any other reason why the Kohler Times, Nick Jimenez, where you did such advocacy for him. I don't know why. You should have done justly. And that judge, certainly, we call for him to step down. I believe he's still the judge. But for you to also have put his portrait up here in this Nueces County Courthouse, knowing that they were victims of his crimes, that possibly till this day suffer from their injuries. I don't know if that textile worker died or was permanently maimed. You've done a disgrace to your paper, Kohler Times, by the way you covered that. And I commend those other newspapers down by the Valley that didn't play into La Raza, meaning let's defend a Mexican just because he's Mexican. That's a racist thing to do.